Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, a major boost in bilateral ties with a longtime ally.
We've had a great relationship. This has been very successful.
My quarrel with the U.S. is not the government and the people.
This after Presidents Rodrigo Duterte and Donald Trump hold their first bilateral meeting.
Now we have a very, very strong relationship with the Philippines.
Now that the two countries reaffirm their economic and military ties,
President Duterte has a friend in the person of President Trump, that he has been an ally since he was elected into office.
in what concrete ways will these bilateral ties move forward? U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Sung Kim, joins us live. And later, get to know the darkest substance on Earth. That's for today's In Focus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. U.S. President Donald Trump speaks up on ties with the Philippines after his Asia tour. He describes the country as an important military location and adds that he has made a lot of progress in rebuilding relations during his trip. President Rodrigo Duterte says that his bilateral meeting with Trump is a big step forward in stronger ties between the Philippines and the United States. The two leaders met on the sidelines of the 31st ASEAN Summit. Let's go straight to the source of the story. United States Ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Sung Kim, welcome to the show. Good to finally have you, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Pinky.
I wanted to get your general reaction on the recently concluded ASEAN Summit, sir.
Well, I'm delighted because I think the President had a wonderful visit to the Philippines. Their discussion between President Trump and President Duterte, I thought it was very substantive, very productive. And overall, I think the Philippines did a wonderful job of hosting the ASEAN Summit.
That's exactly also what President Trump was saying. Tremendous talent. He definitely enjoyed that gala dinner. That was really the first time they saw each other officially. Well, they saw each other in Vietnam.
Very briefly.
In passing, and then they saw each other. You know, even I was watching it, the first handshake between the two presidents at the gala dinner. You were there as well, sir?
I was, and I think it was pretty obvious to all of us that the two leaders have a good connection. And I think that was displayed throughout the summit activities.
Good chemistry, actually, some people were calling it.
I think so.
Yeah, really how the two presidents were looking at each other, shaking each other's hand, and even during the dinner, and President Trump enjoying that gala dinner as well. Talking about the highlights of that ASEAN trip, of course, between the two presidents, what would you say was the most important part?
Well, I think to step back a little bit, this was obviously a very important trip for the United States and for President Trump. I think he had three very important goals. One, of course, was to stay united with key countries in the region on North Korea, the challenge posed by North Korea. Two, I think the President made very clear that we're interested and deeply committed to strengthening alliances and economic partnerships in a free and open Indo-Pacific region. And third, the President made very clear our deep commitment to promoting fair and reciprocal trade. And I think those three goals played throughout his two-week trip. And certainly there were prominent topics here in the Philippines.
That was a 12-day trip, wasn't it?
Yes.
His Asian trip was 12 days. The bilateral meeting, of course, was something much awaited between the two presidents. We were wondering what would happen. They allowed media to come in for a bit, and then eventually they asked media to leave. There were, of course, a number of cabinet secretaries present on the side, on both countries, especially on the side of the Philippines. But the issue on human rights, of course, that's a big concern. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders saying it was discussed. There was a little bit of a contradiction with our presidential spokesperson, Harry Roque. Was it discussed, Ambassador? And if it was, in what context? How did it happen?
Well, I was, of course, in the room as well, and I can assure you that it was discussed. It was not an extensive discussion, but I think it was a very important discussion. And it took place in the context of the counter-drugs effort here in the Philippines. We, of course, all understand that this is a huge problem for the Philippines. And, in fact, that's why we have been supporting the Philippine government's efforts to deal with this very difficult challenge. And in that context, the two leaders talked about the importance of rule of law, And as the joint statement between the two leaders indicates, they agreed that protecting human rights is essential to any society.
I want to bring that up on the screen. The two sides underscored that human rights and the dignity of human life are essential and agreed to continue mainstreaming human rights agenda international programs to promote the welfare of all sectors, including the most vulnerable groups. When we talk about the most vulnerable groups, Ambassador Babe Romualdez was here, and they were talking about, at least it seemed like the president was talking about those that were, well, killed because of the drug war. The vulnerable groups would be the poorest sector. Would would you confirm that, sir?
Sure, of course. I think obviously that group would be included in those whose human rights should be protected. But I think, as our two countries have agreed for a very long time, protecting human rights is a universal value. And I think both governments, both countries are committed to doing so for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Were there issues raised by President Donald Trump regarding the war on illegal drugs? Maybe the number of deaths, did he question that? Was he alarmed by that? Was that a concern for him?
I don't want to get into too much detail on the discussion between the two leaders. I think the joint statement does a very good job of summarizing the key topics that they addressed. But not surprisingly, the discussion on the drug problem was fairly extensive, given that it's such an important issue for both countries. But the president did not talk about some killings related to drugs explicitly.
Okay, not really at length, sir. That was a 40-minute bilateral meeting. Let's talk about that. I know that you can't say too much about it. Other topics that were discussed after the war on drugs.
Well, they began the meeting by reaffirming both countries' very strong commitment to the alliance. This, of course, is a very important military partnership, a 70-year-old military partnership that has been very productive for both countries. And so they made very clear that both the United States and the Philippines remain fully committed to strengthening and expanding that partnership. Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of the overall framework for the discussion on other topics, including narcotics. And of course, Marawi came up prominently as well.
So much to talk about that, because even Marawi, I understand that President Trump also congratulated President Duterte for the liberation of Marawi. I'm going to go there in a little while. Just want to finish this topic on, well, aside from the war on drugs, trade was also discussed, Ambassador. In what context?
Well, economic partnership between our two countries is actually a fairly significant aspect of the relationship. It's been, again, a very mutually beneficial relationship. And I think both countries are interested in expanding the economic partnership. The Philippine side has indicated their interest in doing a free trade agreement with us, and we're willing to consider that possibility. But we already have an existing trade framework that allows us to discuss economic, trade, investment-related issues. And I think that process will continue, but we will explore the possibility of a free trade agreement.
So that could be in the works pretty soon?
Well, the TIFA framework, as we call it, the existing framework, yes, will continue. And in fact, there's a meeting coming up end of this month in Washington. So that'll be a good occasion to, again, discuss outstanding issues, but also look forward to what we can do in terms of preparing the way for free trade agreement negotiations.
Right, but there were also, well, promises or at least help coming from the United States. Before I forget, there was supposed to be this $2 million aid or support to support the drug demand reduction programs in the Philippines. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, I'm very pleased to support a comprehensive anti-drug effort in the Philippines, including demand reduction, rehabilitation, in addition to, of course, law enforcement cooperation. So the $2 million assistance you mentioned is focused on demand reduction activities. And I think we will look to find additional sources of funding to support other aspects of the anti-drug campaign.
This is just the start.
Yes.
One of many.
One of many.
We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Still to come, we'll discuss the role of the United States in the South China Sea dispute, and we'll get to know U.S. Ambassador Sung Kim a little bit more. Like, what's his favorite Filipino food? That's after the break. And later, this discovery can change the way we use art and explore space. Japan, China, South Korea, Vietnam, Philippines. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Sung Kim. Let's talk about Marawi, Ambassador. President Trump congratulating President Rodrigo Duterte on the liberation of Marawi, and President Duterte also thanking the United States for the help in Marawi. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, of course. But before that, let me again express our deepest condolences to those who suffered during the 5-month siege of Marawi. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers are with the families and friends of those who were killed in the action. As you mentioned, the President congratulated the Philippines, specifically the Armed Forces of the Philippines, for doing such a great job to end the terrorist siege of Marawi. And AFP, I have to say, really did an amazing job. Very difficult circumstances. Urban warfare is a huge challenge, but AFP, I think, did a wonderful, wonderful job. So the President wanted to congratulate them. And as you mentioned, President Duterte thanked us for our support. And I'm deeply proud of the support that we provided. I think very important intelligence and information sharing, technical advice, and some grant of key equipment that I think proved to be very useful for AFP.
Right. Some of the equipment used in Lake Lanao also came from the United States, right?
That's right.
Right. I saw a photo of that as well. But if we were to sum it up in terms of technical assistance on equipment, training, what I read was so far there's been about $85 million in counterterrorism equipment and training provided by the United States to the Philippines, Ambassador?
I think that sounds right, although I suspect the figure is actually bigger when you consider the amount of assistance that we have been providing for some time leading up to what we were doing in support of AFP in Marawi.
Okay, and then strategic location. President Trump kept saying that the Philippines is an important and a strategic location. I just want to go back to that particular statement made by President Donald Trump. I believe he was aboard Air Force One. He must have just landed in Honolulu at that time. Let's listen to the statement made by President Trump.
The Philippines is an unbelievably important military location because if you speak to the admirals and you speak to the generals, that's a perfect spot. And as you know, we had no relationship for a long period of time in the Philippines. You know, we have a very good relationship there. We're back with the Philippines, so strategically we have a very important location, maybe the most important strategic location in that area. So it's good.
Ambassador, given that statement, what can we expect in terms of boosting military ties? Is there a more active approach now?
Well, as I mentioned, I think there's a very strong commitment both in Washington and Manila to deepening our military partnership. As the President indicated, this is a very important country, very important location in many ways. So we're going to try to do everything possible to expand and deepen our alliance. And I think one example is a series of bilateral exercises that we continue to carry out with the Philippines. Balikatan is a very major exercise that took place a few months ago, and we've already have in the plans a series of exercises for next year. I think very critically useful, valuable exercises and training for the two militaries.
Is there a specific date on that already for next year's training exercises?
It'll be sometime in the spring.
Okay, sometime in the spring. All right. And then also I need to bring this in because President Trump made mention that the United States could possibly serve as a mediator in the South China Sea dispute. However, he said this in Vietnam. Is there anything you can share with us regarding that statement?
I think given that we have such a strong interest in the Asia-Pacific region, Indo-Pacific region, and given the importance of protecting principles like freedom of navigation and overflight, it's not surprising that we would offer ourselves in any way possible to help resolve a very difficult situation. But of course, it's up to the claimants themselves. We're certainly not trying to intrude into anything. I think the President was simply making an offer that if we can be helpful in resolving the situation, we're of course willing to help.
All right, just a clarification. there was an announcement today, maybe this was today or maybe yesterday, of assistance of, I believe this is $14 million for Marawi. Is this, of course, on top of the $2 million we mentioned for the drug problem, sir?
Right. This is the $40 million refers to USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development. Funds being made available to help with immediate needs in Marawi, but also some medium-term, longer-term rehabilitation efforts. So that is being done. And again, we hope that we will be able to do more beyond the $14 million.
So we're looking at an initial, just to clarify that, Ambassador, an initial $14 million.
Yes, we'll be looking for additional possibilities. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I want to go, get to know you a little bit better. You arrived December 2016. So it's been almost a year.
Yeah.
How's it been so far living in the Philippines? Are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it immensely. In fact, it's gone by too fast. I still can't believe that it's been almost a year already. I think Philippines is a fascinating place. I actually wanted to come here very badly, so obviously honored to have the opportunity to serve here as the U.S. ambassador. Such special history between our two countries, and I think the bond between our Americans and Filipinos incredibly special. I mean, we, as you know, have 4 million Filipino Americans living in the United States, contributing in many different ways to the American society. We also have a fairly large contingent of Americans living in the Philippines. So it's just it's a really special opportunity for me.
Was there something in the Philippines that you thought was a certain way and it wasn't, or the other way around? Any expectations that were not satisfied, or the opposite?
I think the opposite. In fact, I'm enjoying it even more than I thought I would enjoy. And that's sort of every aspect. I mean, work can be difficult and challenging, but still exciting, stimulating, rewarding. And lifestyle, I think, is terrific here.
I need to inject this because you said it. Yeah, work is challenging, I'm sure, especially in the beginning.
Well, I mean, it's no secret that last year was not an easy period for U.S.-Philippines relations for a variety of reasons. But I'm pleased that we're moving in a much more positive direction since the beginning of the year.
You heave a sigh of relief now?
I think so.
What about places you have yet to go to? I'm sure you said, sir, obviously it's been challenging. You've been doing a lot of activities. It's kept you more busy or busier than you thought. What are the places you've been to, and where would you like? What's the next place you'd like to see here in the Philippines?
I've, of course, traveled to Davao, Tacloban, Leyte, Cebu, Baguio, and a few other places. And I've enjoyed every single trip, although they have all been official, so it's been busy trips. So I'm actually looking forward to a very quiet vacation, in some beautiful beach resort.
We're not allowed to know. We're not allowed to know where that is.
Once I make the reservation, I'll let you know.
All right, or maybe I can give you some tips as well.
Sounds
Ambassador, what about, what's the favorite place you've been to? I mean, it's been all official, but so far, can you pick one that has been memorable to you?
I have a very soft spot for Baguio, not only because it's a beautiful setting, but of course, again, there's a very deep history between U.S. and the Philippines in Baguio. So I enjoy going up there very much.
Are you enjoying the food at all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? Like, what would you crave for? What kind of Filipino food would you crave for?
I'm becoming a very big fan of lechon, especially Cebuan lechon. Which is surprising because I'm actually not a big fan of roasted pork.
Yeah.
So I didn't think I would enjoy it very much, but I like it quite a bit.
One more, aside from lechon.
Adobo, of course.
Of course. The usual. What can we expect, Ambassador, let's say, coming into the end of the year?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, I think the relationship is on a very positive trajectory. And obviously, we want to maintain that. In fact, we want to enhance it. So I think we can look back at what's happened this year with pride, and I think look forward to doing even more in the coming years.
Ambassador Sung Kim, we again are honored to have you. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again in some of the functions maybe next year.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Coming up, a material that can absorb 99.9% of all light and considered to be the Earth's darkest substance. That's for today's In.
Today's headlines. ASEAN dialogue partners commit to improve cooperation in various areas of concern with ASEAN member nations. A labor group lauds ASEAN's commitment to sign a consensus protecting migrant workers. Oil companies implement fuel price hikes early morning, driving prices up to 50 pesos per liter. U.S. President Donald Trump vows to strengthen trade partnerships with ASEAN countries. Good day, I'm Pia Roses Morato. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Today marks the closing of the 31st ASEAN Summit in the Philippines. ASEAN leaders and dialogue partners continued their meetings, culminating in the signing of a consensus protecting migrant workers. Here is our report.
The 31st ASEAN Summit continued today with more meetings between ASEAN member countries and dialogue partners. The ASEAN Plus 3, which includes China, Japan, and Korea, convened for their 20th commemorative summit. ASEAN also marked the 40th anniversary of its ties with Canada and the European Union. ASEAN Chairman President Rodrigo Duterte hosted lunch in honor of the members of the East Asia Summit, which consists of the ASEAN members, Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, Russia, South Korea, and the United States. The East Asia Summit convened afterwards, followed by ASEAN's meeting with India. Today's highlight was the signing of the ASEAN Consensus on the Protection of the Rights of Migrant Workers, which aims to improve, protect, and promote the rights of migrant workers in ASEAN. The ASEAN Summit ended with the handover of the ASEAN Summit to Singapore and a press conference by President Duterte. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Benj Bondo.
President Rodrigo Duterte and U.S. President Donald Trump discussed the drug menace, terrorism, and trade issues in their bilateral meeting at the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit. Here is our report.
President Rodrigo Duterte and U.S. President Donald Trump had a lengthy and meaningful discussion about relevant issues in their 40-minute bilateral meeting. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Duterte explained in length his policy on the war against drugs, which Trump agreed upon. Trump raised the issue on fair trade, particularly the hefty tariffs imposed on cars. The Philippine side expressed their hope that a free trade agreement can be concluded between both countries. Duterte and Trump also discussed the threat posed by the Islamic State or ISIS, with Duterte thanking the U.S. for its assistance during the Marawi rebellion. They emphasized the fight against terrorism and violent extremism as a common interest. Roque said the meeting between Duterte and Trump was warm and friendly and have been very candid in their dealings. He said Duterte remarked the need to keep ASEAN-US engagement close and to ensure that their strategic partnership delivers the best results for the people. Meanwhile, Trump commended Duterte for successfully chairing ASEAN and thanked the Philippine president for the incredible hospitality. He also congratulated ASEAN for its 50 years of promoting peace, prosperity, and stability in Southeast Asia and in the broader Indo-Pacific region. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Benj Bondo.
The European Union earmarked a total of 2 billion euros to support bilateral development cooperation with ASEAN member states. The Western Bloc announced this ahead of the 40th EU-ASEAN Summit held today. In a statement, European Council President Donald Tusk said EU countries want to widen and deepen a relationship with ASEAN that is based on mutual respect, common interests, and shared values. Tusk called upon the international community to take counsel together and cooperate on relevant issues such as trade, security, and climate change. This year's ASEAN-EU Summit marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the ASEAN-EU relations on November 14. Participating leaders aim to accelerate efforts towards a strategic partnership between the two blocs and further enhance political and security dialogue and cooperation.
President Rodrigo Duterte chairs the plenary of the 31st ASEAN Summit under the theme Partnering for Change, Engaging the World. This coincides with the 50th anniversary of ASEAN. Duterte accepted the chairmanship of ASEAN from Laos on September 8, 2016 at the end of the 30th ASEAN Summit. Last January 15, the Philippines launched its chairmanship of ASEAN in Davao. Commemorative coins and stamps were also launched. From then on, the country became the venue to a series of meetings with ASEAN officials on all levels. Each of them were hosted in Metro Manila and other major destinations, such as Davao, Palawan, and Boracay. The Philippines commemorated the 50th anniversary of ASEAN in August with a landmark lighting activity at the CCP complex, followed by cultural performances and an ASEAN-inspired parade. Other commemorative activities were a tribute to the 5 founding fathers of ASEAN, the ASEAN Youth Social Entrepreneurship Awards, recognition of the ASEAN Biodiversity Heroes, the ASEAN Business Awards, and the ASEAN for Humanity Award. To kick off the ASEAN Summit, President Duterte hosted a special gala celebration on the 50th anniversary of ASEAN on November 12. The President led the plenary as the summit opened on November 13. He will host a lunch on November 14 in honor of the East Asia Summit heads of state and guests of the chair. Later on, at the closing ceremony, the President will hand over the chairmanship of ASEAN to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore, the incoming chair for 2018.
President Rodrigo Duterte urged South Korean investors to increase trade and investment in the Philippines. President Duterte extended his invitation to South Korea to further invest in manufacturing, automotive, food, production, processing, agribusiness, electronics, and energy. In his bilateral meeting with Republic of Korea President Moon Jae-in, Duterte urged South Korean investors to further strengthen cooperation in the area of trade. He also expressed his gratitude to South Korea for its imports of Philippine products into South Korea, particularly personal care and other organic products, food and seafood, garments and chemicals, and other electronic parts. President Moon noted that South Korea and the Philippines have the most mutual people-to-people exchanges among ASEAN countries. He cited that there are about 1.5 million Korean tourists who visit the Philippines annually. He expressed hopes that more Filipinos will visit Korea when it hosts the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games in February next year. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe vowed to deepen cooperation with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in various areas of interest and concern. Abe made the commitment during the 20th ASEAN-Japan Summit. The Prime Minister said Japan is willing to share its knowledge and experience with the ASEAN member states in various areas such as maritime security, defense, trade, infrastructure, development, combating terrorism, disaster risk reduction, and cultural exchanges. Among his commitments was the expediting of the Yen Loan Project and the early conclusion of Japan-ASEAN Technical Cooperation Agreement, which was agreed upon at the Japan-ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in August. Abe raised the nuclear and missile issues of North Korea and asked that North Korea be pressured into changing its policy. Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte expressed his congratulations to Prime Minister Abe on his re-election last month on behalf of other ASEAN leaders. He also affirmed Japan's role as one of ASEAN's strongest political dialogue partners. China and the ASEAN member nations agreed to start negotiations on a code of conduct on the South China Sea. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the code of conduct was among the outcomes during the ASEAN-China summit. ASEAN foreign ministers and their Chinese counterparts approved a framework for a code of conduct on the disputed waters back in August. Other outcomes in the meeting chaired by President Rodrigo Duterte included the joint statement of comprehensively strengthening effective anti-corruption cooperation, the ASEAN-China leaders' statement on the tourism cooperation, and the joint statement on further deepening the cooperation of infrastructure connectivity. A labor group lauded the scheduled signing of the ASEAN Consensus on the Protection and Promotion of Migrant Workers under the chairmanship of President Rodrigo Duterte. The Associated Labor Unions Trade Union Congress of the Philippines commended President Duterte for the welfare of millions of migrant workers. It said the consensus will pave the way to improved labor and occupational safety standards, as well as humane treatment of workers and their families across the ASEAN region. The consensus is a byproduct of the ASEAN Declaration on the Protection and Promotion of the Rights of Migrant Workers. It was introduced by the Philippines when it hosted the 12th ASEAN Summit meeting in Cebu on January 2007. The LUTUCP is looking towards the formulation of action plans in 2018 that would compel ASEAN member states to improve their labor and occupational safety and health standards for migrant workers. Still to come, oil companies implement fuel price hikes early morning, driving prices up to 50 pesos per liter. North Cotabato asks for additional government troops in the wake of intensified rebel activity. These and more when the PNA Newsroom continues.
ASEAN strives to foster close political, economic, and social-cultural ties with the rest of the world. This year's ASEAN Summit coincides with the 20th anniversary of the launch of the cooperation between ASEAN and China, Japan, and South Korea, collectively known as the ASEAN Plus 3. ASEAN Plus 3 was created in 1997 to improve existing ties with dialogue partners. This partnership was expanded further through the East Asia Summit in 2005, thus including Australia, New Zealand, and India, now collectively known as ASEAN CER, or Closer Economic Relations. In 2011, the US and Russia became participants of the East Asia Summit. The United Nations is also a dialogue partner of ASEAN. The European Union and Arab League have signified their intent to become observers. Meanwhile, the United States and Canada became ASEAN's dialogue partners in 1977 and have cooperated since then. All participating nations hold related meetings during the ASEAN Summit. First is an internal organization meeting by ASEAN members, followed by a conference with foreign ministers of the ASEAN Regional Forum. Next is a meeting of the ASEAN Plus 3, and finally with ASEAN CER. ASEAN also holds key meetings with the US, Russia, and India. To date, ASEAN holds similar partnerships with Germany, Norway, Pakistan, Switzerland, and various international and regional organizations. Meanwhile, Papua New Guinea, an ASEAN observer, and Timor-Leste have signified to join the organization.
Oil companies announce a round of fuel pump price increases effective today, November 14. Shell, Pilipinas, Petron, Sea Oil, PTT Philippines, and Flying V announced that gasoline prices will go up by as much as 95 centavos per liter. This raises the cost of fuel to as much as 50 pesos per liter. Diesel prices also went up by 60 centavos and kerosene by 95 centavos. The price hikes were brought by movements in the international petroleum market. The Provincial Peace and Order Council, or PPOC, asked the Philippine Army for augmentation forces in North Cotabato amid rising atrocities committed by the New People's Army. In a resolution, PPOC Chair Governor Emilu Mendoza asked the Army's 1,002nd Infantry Brigade to deploy additional troops in towns of where the rebels have been active lately. Superintendent Leo Ajero, North Cotabato Police Intelligence Division Chief, reported that the rebels launched attacks on soft targets, referring to militiamen and civilians in North Cotabato's 2nd District. They reportedly executed 3 off-duty members on the Civilian Armed Forces Geographical Unit in the towns of Arakan, Magpet, and Antipas. Mendoza said the augmentation force will ensure civilians and non-combatants are safe from harassment by communist rebels. Colonel Roberto Angkan, 1002nd Infantry Brigade Commander, vowed to endorse a PPCO resolution to Major General Noel Clement, overall commander of the Army's 10th Infantry Division. A member of the Davao City Police Office was shot dead by 2 suspected members of the New People's Army in Barangay Valencia, Tugbok District, Davao City. The victim was identified as PO3 Wilfredo Garol, assigned at the intelligence section of the Tugbok Police Station. Police say the victim earlier transported his wife, a teacher, to school in Valencia on board his motorcycle. On his way back, the 2 suspects flagged him and asked for a free ride. But when they reached Purok 5 at Sitio Luman, Valencia, the gunman shot Garol several times, resulting to his death. Davao City Chief of Police Senior Superintendent Alexander Tagum suspected the gunmen were members of the NPA liquidation unit. He vowed that police will go after the suspects with the full might of the law. He also warned other cops to stand guard at all times. Police Regional Office 11 Chief Superintendent Manuel Guerrilan also condemned the killing. As of August, the military recorded death of 6 soldiers and a police in Davao region. A television actor died in a drowning incident in a resort in Davao Occidental. The victim was identified as Franco Miguel Hernandez Lumanlan, 26 years old, a member of the all-male group Hashtags. A police report over the weekend showed that the victim visited the hometown of fellow Hashtag member Tom Doromal in Don Marcelino when the accident occurred. Hernandez and his peers were island hopping on board a small motorized bangka when they encountered a strong current that caused their bangka to capsize. Hernandez was rushed to the hospital around 5:30 p.m. where he was declared dead on arrival. Fans and celebrities took to social media to express their condolences. Up next, U.S. President Donald Trump vows to strengthen trade partnerships with ASEAN countries. President Duterte sings for world leaders in the ASEAN Gala dinner. These and more when the PNA Newsroom returns.
The Philippines is one of the 5 founding members of ASEAN. Since its creation in 1967, the Philippines has taken an active role in transforming ASEAN into a major global player. In its previous chairmanships, the Philippines led in the adoption of the Manila Declaration, which aimed to foster closer political and economic cooperation among members and dialogue partners. It also witnessed the adoption of other key agreements, such as the protection of migrant workers, counterterrorism, and the improvement of the ASEAN community. As the Philippines hosts the ASEAN Summit for the 3rd time, leaders will sign the ASEAN Consensus on the protection and promotion of the rights of migrant workers. This landmark document further seeks to strengthen social protection, access to justice, humane and fair treatment, and access to health services for the migrant workers of Southeast Asia. As chair of the ASEAN this year, the Philippines reiterates its policy to pursue a people-oriented and people-centered ASEAN. Peace and stability in the region, maritime security and cooperation, inclusive innovation and growth, ASEAN resiliency, and the realization of ASEAN as a model of regionalism and a global player.
A 7.3 magnitude earthquake hit the Iran-Iraq border area, killing at least 328 and injuring nearly 4,000 people. The quake's epicenter was located approximately 32 kilometers south of the city of Halabja in a remote mountainous region of eastern Iraq. The tremor was felt in several Iranian provinces bordering Iraq, including the capital, Tehran, and also in Turkey, Armenia, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. Over 20 Iranian villages in Iran's Kermanshah province sustained damage and lost power and water. Traffic has normalized despite damage to road networks. More than 30 Iranian emergency teams have been dispatched to the quake-hit region, and helicopters are delivering basic needs. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged all Iranian officials and institutions to aid those affected after the incident. Meanwhile, 3 mourning days has been announced in Kermanshah province, where over 4,000 are feared buried alive under rubble. Member states of ASEAN can expect a better trade partnership with the United States, as pronounced earlier by U.S. President Donald Trump. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Trump introduced the topic on trade during the ASEAN-U.S. dialogue on Monday. Roque added that the U.S. president reiterated his stand on fair trade and brought up the issue of their high tariffs imposed on U.S. cars into the Philippines. Trump also advocated for the U.S. to practice reciprocity and treat countries as they treat the U.S. Roque said the U.S. showed that it still considers ASEAN as a very important trading region. President Duterte shared a light moment with world leaders during the ASEAN Gala dinner. Duterte sang the song Ikaw in a duet with legendary singer Pilita Corrales during the cultural show. He explained that he was egged on to sing by U.S. President Donald Trump. The U.S. President was later on heard praising Duterte's singing during the bilateral meeting with Trump and Duterte. In a Facebook post by Presidential Peace Advisor Jesus Dureza, Trump warmed up to the idea of having a duet with the Philippine president. Dureza noted the bilateral meeting showed good vibes between the two presidents. Here's another look at today's headlines. ASEAN Dialogue partners commit to improve cooperation in various areas of concern with ASEAN member nations. A labor group lauds ASEAN's commitment to sign a consensus protecting migrant workers. Oil companies implement fuel price hikes early morning, driving prices up to 50 pesos per liter. U.S. President Donald Trump vows to strengthen trade partnerships with ASEAN countries. The holidays are coming soon. For more stories, please log on to www.pna.gov.ph or visit the PNA page on Facebook and Twitter. And that's your daily dose of the hottest news in the latest.
Kalapunan, nadala. Kalis. Tanghal. Ta! Kalapunan, tanghal. Ta! Kalis. Baba. Ta! Your Excellency, the Honor Guard Battalion is now ready for inspection. Sir. Sir, the colors, ready. Salute. Tanghal. Ta! Kalipunan. Tanghal. Ta! Baba. Ta! Dadala. Kalis. Baba. Ta! Your Excellency, the ceremony is over. Kalipunan, baba. Kalis.
Yes, very old. Here, sir. One is fine. Good afternoon, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, my first words would be welcome to the Philippines. This is about almost 10 years after a visit of an official from China. We would like to express to you our gratitude for visiting us and making your promise to that you will come here to the Philippines for a visit. And not only that, it is highlighted by so many things that we will officially announce of the assistance, the trade agreements, and so many things that you have promised us to give. And I know that it will come to us in the days to come. We express our gratitude to President Xi Jinping and kindly extend to him a warm feelings, and including the Filipino people. We are gratified by the so many things you have done so far. You have proven to be a good friend of the Philippines. And we look forward to a more robust, more productive relations in the days to come. Mr. President, we cannot offer you anything, Mr. Prime Minister, at this time, because we are not really in parity as yours. But maybe in the years to come, the Filipinos will reciprocate what you have done for us. And let me also assure you that during the critical stage of the Marawi incident, where we needed help badly, it was China who responded immediately for our cry for help. And the arms that you gave us help abbreviate, shorten the military fight there with the effective use of the weapons. And I am happy to report to you that one of the rifles that you gave us killed Hapilon, who was the leader or the emir that they named in the Philippines. So maybe I will look for the soldier who fired the fatal shot. And